They called her a hero until she loved a human. The healer's choice. The silver moons of Lumeria cast long shadows across the whispering valley as Selene knelt beside the glowing spring, her fingers trailing through the luminescent water. As first healer of the eastern province, she often came here to gather the sacred lotus that flourished nowhere else in their world. Tonight, however, something felt different. The air carried a strange electricity, and the usual soothing song of the night birds had fallen silent. Selene glanced up at the sky, her violet eyes reflecting the three moons that hung like jewels above her. Her long platinum hair, streaked with iridescent blue, swayed gently in the evening breeze. Among her people, such coloring marked her as one blessed by the ancients, destined for greatness in the healing arts. The sudden flash of light tore through the peaceful night, blazing across the heavens before slamming into the hills beyond the forbidden zone. The impact shook the ground beneath her feet, sending ripples across the once calm surface of the spring. "Stars above," Selene whispered, clutching her harvesting basket. The forbidden zone was strictly off-limits, had been for centuries since the Great Division, when her ancestors had sealed themselves away from the outside world and its dangers. Logic told her to return to the city, to report what she had seen to the Council of Elders. But something pulled at her, a feeling she couldn't explain, couldn't ignore. "Just a quick look," she murmured to herself, securing her basket to her belt and setting off toward the glowing red light that now illuminated the distant hills. The journey took longer than expected. The Forbidden Zone's edge was marked by ancient boundary stones, tall, weathered monoliths covered in warnings in the old language. Selene hesitated only briefly before stepping past them, feeling a slight tingle as she crossed the barrier field that would alert the council to unauthorized entry. She had perhaps an hour before guards would arrive to investigate. The crash site was chaos, broken earth, shattered stone, and in the center, not a meteor as she had expected, but a vessel. Small, sleek, constructed of materials she had never seen before. Steam hissed from ruptured sections, and pieces of debris lay scattered across the scorched ground. Selene approached cautiously, her healer's instincts overtaking her fear. If this was an off-world vessel, there might be survivors who needed help. A groan from behind a large section of twisted metal caught her attention. Rushing forward, she discovered a figure half buried in the rubble. Not Lumerian, this was a human, a male with olive skin and dark hair matted with blood. His strange clothing was torn and burned in places, revealing numerous injuries beneath. Selene froze. Humans were forbidden. Contact with them had been outlawed since before she was born. The stories told of their violent nature, their greed, their primitive emotions that led to war and destruction. She'd never seen one before, but the ancient texts were clear. Humans were dangerous. Yet this one lay helpless, dying. "Help," he whispered, his eyes fluttering open briefly to reveal a startling shade of amber, a color no Lumerian possessed. "Please." Selene's hands trembled. The first law was absolute. No contact with outsiders, especially humans. Breaking it meant exile at best, execution at worst. But the healer's oath was equally sacred, to preserve life, regardless of form. With a deep breath, she knelt beside him, reaching into her healer's pouch for the glowing lotus she had harvested. Crushing the petals between her palms, she whispered the ancient words that would activate their healing properties. "I don't know if you can understand me," she said softly, applying the luminous paste to his worst wounds, "but I'm trying to help you." The human's eyes opened again, clearer this time. "I understand," he said weakly. "Universal translator, still working." Selene startled. "You speak our language." "Technology," he managed before wincing in pain, "translates automatically." She worked swiftly, using both the healing plants and her own innate abilities, placing her hands over his chest, channeling the energy that flowed through all Lumerians into his broken body. Bones began to knit, lacerations sealed, and the dangerous internal bleeding slowed. "What's your name?" she asked, partly to keep him conscious, partly out of genuine curiosity. "Dominic," he replied, his voice stronger now. "Dominic Reed, Exploration Corps, Earth Alliance." "Earth," Selene repeated the unfamiliar word. "Is that your home world?" He nodded slightly, then grimaced. "Mission, to establish. Diplomatic contact, ship malfunction, emergency landing." Selene's heart raced. Diplomatic contact. But Lumeria had hidden itself away from the galaxy for generations. How had they found her world? "No one is supposed to know we're here," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "Ancient records," Dominic managed. "Legends of advanced civilization took years to find you." A sound in the distance, the whine of hover engines, made Selene's blood run cold. The patrol had arrived sooner than expected. "They can't find you," she said urgently. "They'll kill you, our laws." "Go," Dominic said, attempting to sit up. "Don't risk yourself." Selene made a split-second decision. "No, I started healing you, I'll finish." With surprising strength, she helped him to his feet and guided him toward a nearby cave she knew from childhood explorations. By the time the patrol ships arrived at the crash site, they were hidden deep within the cavern system that ran beneath the Whispering Valley. "Why?" Dominic asked as she continued treating his wounds in the dim light of a small illumination crystal. "Why help me? Break your laws?" Selene considered the question as she worked. "Because it was right," she finally answered. "Because a life is a life, regardless of where it comes from." For 3 days, Selene tended to Dominic in the cave, returning to the city only to gather supplies and maintain appearances. She learned of Earth, of the stars beyond their system, of advances and discoveries her isolated world had never imagined. Each night, she returned to the cave with food, medicine, and endless questions. On the 4th day, Dominic was strong enough to walk without assistance. "Your people," he said as they sat sharing a simple meal, "they've hidden themselves away for so long. There's so much you could share with the galaxy, so much you could learn." Selene shook her head. "The Great Division happened for a reason. Our ancestors feared what contact with other species would bring: war, corruption, the loss of our ways." "Not all contact leads to destruction," Dominic argued. "Sometimes it leads to growth, to understanding." Their conversations had grown more personal with each passing day. Selene found herself drawn to his passion, his curiosity, his way of seeing the world so differently from her people's rigid perspectives. "I should take you to the council," she said, not for the first time. "Explain what happened, try to convince them. That a human crash-landed in your sacred forbidden zone, and you harbored him instead of reporting it immediately." Dominic raised an eyebrow. "How do you think that would go?" "Not well," Selene admitted with a small smile. The smile faded as footsteps echoed through the cave entrance. Selene leapt to her feet, placing herself between Dominic and the intruder. Commander Thorne stepped into the light, his stern face twisted with disgust, his hand resting on the energy weapon at his side. Behind him stood a full patrol of Lumerian guards, their expressions equally hostile. "First Healer Selene," Thorne's voice was cold as ice. "So the reports were true. You've betrayed our people for an outsider." "Commander, I can explain." "There is nothing to explain," Thorne cut her off. "You've broken the first law, the penalty is clear." Dominic stepped forward. "She was only helping me. I crashed here accidentally. There was no intention to violate your space." Thorne's eyes narrowed. "It speaks our language. How much have you told it about our defenses, our weaknesses?" "Nothing," Selene protested, "and he's not in it. His name is Dominic Reed from Earth. They've been searching for peaceful contact with us." "Peaceful?" Thorne scoffed. "Like the peace that nearly destroyed us in the time before. No," he gestured to his guards. "Take them both to the Citadel. The Council will decide their fate." As the guards surrounded them, Dominic whispered to Selene, "I'm sorry. This is my fault. She shook her head, watching as they confiscated her healer's pouch and bound her hands with energy cuffs. No, for the first time in my life I made a choice because it was right, not because it was law. They were marched from the cave, Seleni's mind racing. She had known the risk from the moment she crossed the boundary stones, yet she couldn't bring herself to regret helping Dominic. In just a few days, he had shown her a perspective on the universe that challenged everything she had been taught. As they approached the gleaming spires of the Lemurian capital, the three moons aligned overhead, casting a brilliant light across the crystal towers. An ancient omen, Selene thought, a sign of great change to come. For better or worse, she had set something in motion that could not be undone. Defiance of destiny. The Lemurian citadel rose like a mountain of crystal and light above the central plaza, its translucent spires reflecting the glow of the three aligned moons. Inside the council chamber, Selene stood before the seven elders, her wrists still bound by energy cuffs. Beside her, Dominic remained silent, his face betraying nothing as Grand Chancellor Valen read the charges against them. First Healer Selene, daughter of House Orin, you stand accused of violating the first law. Valen's deep voice resonated through the chamber. His ancient face was impassive, but his eyes, sharp despite his centuries, revealed his disappointment. You crossed the boundary, made contact with an outsider, concealed his presence, and shared our knowledge with him. How do you plead? The chamber was packed with spectators, council members, citizens, and guards. Among them, Selene spotted her younger sister Lyra, her face tight with worry, and beside her, Orion, once the Citadel's most brilliant scientist before his controversial theories about reconnecting with other worlds had led to his disgrace. I acknowledge my actions, Selene said, her voice steady despite her fear. But I cannot call them crimes. I am a healer. I found someone injured and I helped him, as our ancestors would have done before the Great Division. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. You presume to know the will of the ancients? Elder Myra asked, leaning forward, her silver eyes narrowed. I know the healer's oath, Selene replied. To preserve life regardless of form, that oath predates the first law. Convenient interpretation, Commander Thorne said from his position by the door. The human should be executed immediately. Its kind cannot be trusted. Dominic finally spoke. My name is Dominic Reed, representative of the Earth Alliance. I came in peace, seeking dialogue with your civilization. Valen raised a hand for silence. The outsider will not speak unless questioned directly. Why do you fear his words? Selene challenged. What truth might he share that you don't want our people to hear? The Grand Chancellor's face hardened. You forget yourself, healer. This chamber has enforced the first law for 1,000 years. Your sentimentality does not outweigh generations of wisdom. Then why hide that wisdom away? A voice called from the spectator section. Orion stepped forward, his weathered face determined beneath his shock of white hair. Why keep secret the true reason for the Great Division? Guards moved to restrain him, but Valen waved them back. Let the disgraced one speak. His words only further undermined the accused's position. Orion approached the center of the chamber. I've spent decades studying the oldest archives, texts sealed away by this very council. The Great Division wasn't about protecting Lemuria from outsiders. It was about controlling our own people. Gasps filled the chamber. Lies, Elder Coven shouted, rising to his feet. The truth, Orion countered. Our ancestors feared what would happen if Lemurians and humans discovered how similar they truly were, how they might share ideas, culture, even love. Selene felt a chill run through her. She glanced at Dominic, who was watching Orion with intense concentration. The prophecy of convergence, Dominic said softly, almost to himself. The chamber fell silent. What did you say? Valen demanded, his composure cracking for the first time. The prophecy of convergence, Dominic repeated louder. It's mentioned in Earth's oldest records about your people. When the three moons align and the boundary falls, two worlds shall become one. Valen's face had gone pale. How do you know those words? They're part of our historical archives, Dominic explained. Fragments preserved from the last contact between our civilizations. Selene looked between them, confused. What prophecy? I've never heard of this. Because they erased it from our history, Lyra spoke up, moving to stand beside Orion. She pulled out a small crystal from her pocket. This contains a copy of the original texts Orion discovered. The Council didn't just fear humans, they feared what we might become if we embraced the connection between our worlds. Commander Thorne strode forward. Enough of this sedition. The outsider has clearly corrupted more than just the healer. He drew his weapon. Grand Chancellor, I recommend immediate action before this spreads. Wait, Selene cried. Look outside. Through the crystal walls of the chamber, all could see the three moons perfectly aligned above the city, a spectacle that occurred only once in a generation. As they watched, a pulse of energy rippled from the alignment, washing over the citadel in waves of light. The energy cuffs around Selene's wrists flickered and failed. The boundary fields, a guard reported urgently. They're fluctuating across the entire forbidden zone. The prophecy begins, Orion whispered. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Some council members fled while others shouted for order. Commander Thorne advanced on Dominic, weapon raised. No, Selene moved without thinking, placing herself between them. A bolt of energy from Thorne's weapon struck her shoulder, sending her crashing to the floor. Dominic caught her before she hit the ground. Selene. Through the pain, she felt something strange, a connection, a flow of energy between them. Her wound began to glow with the same luminescence as her healing lotus. Impossible, Elder Myra gasped. The human, he channels our energy. The entire chamber watched in astonishment as Dominic's hands glowed with Lumerian healing energy, the wound on Selene's shoulder closing under his touch. The prophecy speaks truth, Orion announced to the stunned assembly. Our peoples are not meant to be separated. We share the same ancestral source, the same cosmic origin. Valen's face had transformed from shock to calculation. Detain them all, he ordered the guards. This development requires study. The humans' abilities could be weaponized, used to strengthen our position. Always power, Selene said weakly, rising to her feet with Dominic's help. That's what this has always been about, hasn't it? Not protection, but control. Lyra rushed forward, pressing something into Selene's hand, a small transport key. Eastern Dock, she whispered. Orion's ship, go. Before the guards could react, Orion activated a device on his wrist. The chamber's lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness save for the moonlight streaming through the crystal walls. Run, Orion shouted. Selene grabbed Dominic's hand and they fled through the confusion, racing down corridors as alarms blared throughout the citadel. Behind them, they could hear Lyra and Orion creating diversions, buying them precious time. Why would they help us? Dominic asked as they ducked into a service passage. Orion has spent his life trying to expose the truth, Selene explained, wincing at the lingering pain in her shoulder. And Lyra, she's always believed our isolation was wrong. They emerged onto a deserted landing platform where a small vessel waited, sleek, designed for speed rather than comfort. Do you know how to fly this? Dominic asked as they boarded. Technically, no, Selene admitted, studying the controls. But I've watched Orion enough times. The principles should be similar to our healing simulations, channeling energy through specific pathways. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder. Well, it's learn fast or die trying, Dominic said, taking the co-pilot's seat. I can help navigate once we're airborne, but takeoff is all yours. Selene placed her hands on the control crystals, feeling the ship respond to her energy. The engines hummed to life, and the vessel rose shakily from the platform just as Commander Thorne and his guards burst onto the dock. Energy weapons fired, grazing the ship's hull as Selene accelerated away from the citadel, climbing toward the night sky. "They're following," Dominic warned, watching the scanner. "3 patrol ships closing fast." Selene's hands tightened on the controls. "Where do we go? There's nowhere on Lumeria that's safe now." Dominic's expression was determined. "My emergency beacon is still active. If we can reach high orbit, my people will find us." "Leave Lumeria," Selene whispered, the reality of what they were doing finally hitting her. Everything she had ever known, her position, her home, her world, was falling away behind them. A blast rocked the ship, sending warning lights flashing across the console. "We don't have much choice," Dominic pointed out. "Can this ship break atmosphere?" "Orion modified it for exactly that purpose," Selene replied, pushing the engines harder. "He always believed we would return to the stars someday." As they climbed higher, the 3 moons seemed to grow larger, their alignment creating a path of light through the darkening sky. The patrol ships continued their pursuit, but Selene's instinctive understanding of the vessel gave them an edge. "Almost there," Dominic encouraged as the blue of Lumeria's atmosphere began to darken. "Just a little more." A final, desperate shot from the lead patrol ship struck their engine. The ship shuddered violently, systems flickering. "We're losing power," Selene cried, trying to reroute energy through the damaged systems. Dominic moved beside her, placing his hands over hers on the controls. Once again, that strange connection formed between them, energy flowing, mingling, strengthening. "Together," he said, "like the healing, channel it together." Selene felt it then, not just the flow of power between them, but something deeper, a resonance that seemed to echo through time itself, as if they were fulfilling something set in motion long ago. The ship stabilized, breaking free of Lumeria's gravity as the pursuing vessels fell away, unable to follow into deep space. On the viewscreen before them, the vastness of the cosmos opened up, countless stars, endless possibilities. "The Earth Alliance vessel should detect us soon," Dominic said, checking the emergency beacon. "Within the hour, we'll have transport to safety." Selene stood by the viewport, gazing back at Lumeria, a shining blue-green jewel set against the blackness of space, growing smaller by the moment. "I've just given up everything," she said softly. Dominic joined her. "Or you've just begun to discover what everything truly means." A signal chimed from the console. The Earth vessel had detected them and was changing course to intercept. "What happens now?" Selene asked, torn between excitement and fear. "Now we bring the prophecy to life," Dominic replied. "2 peoples, separated for too long, beginning to reconnect. It won't be easy. There will be resistance on both sides. But if what happened in the council chamber is true, if our peoples really do share the same source, then perhaps this was always meant to be," Selene finished. Behind them, Lumeria continued to recede, while before them, the stars beckoned with ancient promise. The path wouldn't be easy, but as Selene looked at Dominic, this human who had changed everything, she knew with certainty that it was right. The boundary had fallen. 2 worlds would become one, and whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together beneath the light of distant, welcoming stars. "Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses."